For decades, women had been fighting for their rights in all aspects of life, starting from equal treatment, through the right to work, to the right of equal pay. Since being given the opportunity to have careers, women have been on a mission to do one important thing: to be treated seriously in a male-dominated world. But as time went by and women became settled in all walks of life, oftentimes outdoing men in many industries of business, there came a debate if we're really still overlooked or undermined by our male counterparts, despite the radical movements and often unhealthy shifts of perspectives and views regarding what it means to be a powerful woman. It came to a situation where women really could do whatever they wanted and position themselves as leaders. Yet the voices of inequality are still rampant. And what's interesting, they're mostly perpetuated by women themselves. So, what's the truth behind the ability of women to achieve success in business? Are we still in a position of having to push through the unequal treatment, or is it perfectly achievable? And the words of James Brown's song are no longer entirely true. In today's episode, I'll be speaking about just that with my guest, Janine Jensen, a growth mentor, speaker, and author who, for the past 3 decades, managed to successfully position herself in many male-dominated environments, from business to social to sports, and skillfully navigate the demands and challenges those environments presented. She is now helping other women transform from fearful to fierce to find their voice and successfully maneuver the male-dominated world. Welcome back. My name is Magdalena Hanna, and this is Habits of Influence, a podcast by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of entrepreneurship and building a movement.
Everything that happens is motivation.
Hi, Janine. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's so lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure and an honor. I've read your bio. I've read everything that you have provided in the initial form that we give all of our guests, and I've been very, very, very impressed. I've also stalked your social media a little bit so that so I get to know who you are a little bit, and I can see how much I resonate with what you are trying to achieve in terms of speaking to people. And especially what I resonate with is that fierce and strong nature that you have, the questioning everything. You're making your people, basically your audience, question everything, isn't it? That's exactly what I do. That's why I find it so inspiring to meet people that are of a similar nature, because we kind of grew in today's society to be a little bit mediocre, a little bit lenient with certain topics. We've got like 2 divisive sides and nobody wants to go that middle road. So I'm really, really excited to have you. And since you are a very outspoken and strong woman, I wanted to know, and I'm sure our listeners as well, what made you become the person that you are today? Because it is directly influenced by your experiences, isn't it? Could you tell a little bit more of your story?
So thank you, first of all. I'm an only child, and I was mainly raised by my mother, even though my parents were together. My mom was very weak. Let's just be frank. Lovely woman. She was just very weak. And when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, we'd go to the grocery store. She did not have enough courage to ask the salesperson or the stock boy how much the frozen peas were. And so as a young kid, I had to step up and really be strong. I had to learn how to voice my voice because my mom couldn't do it. And so I think from a very young age, I just took on that role of being in charge. And my mom and I kind of switched roles. She kind of became the daughter and I became the mother figure. And it just proceeded that way. So it's a bad thing for a mother-daughter relationship, but it's a great thing for business, because I grew up from a very young age learning how to stand up for myself and speak for myself and get my point across and make myself be heard. And a lot of people, especially women, have a lot of difficulty doing that today. So I think I was kind of groomed in a way to become who I am. I guess I could have either become very docile like my mother or outspoken.
Hmm.
And we can see which direction I went.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing the story. And yeah, absolutely. It kind of forces us, isn't it? If we don't have that strong leader, like somebody to lead us from the very beginning, we do need to kind of take over the wheel, so to speak, and
Yep.
become that person that we need, essentially, especially in the first, formative years of life, which are so important to us. But I also know that everything that you do today is also directly impacted and derived from the experiences you've had in business, because you've been 30 years in real estate and construction. You also you are a badass woman. You've got a three black belts.
I have 3 black
Black
belts.
belt. You're a black
Yeah.
belt, and you've done all sorts of things that could seemingly be classed as typically male things, isn't it? So
Everything I've done has been in a male-dominated industry. Everything. And that's just what I was drawn to. It just happened.
I want to know more about it. Is especially, I've read that you were a driving instructor, but teaching people how to go fast, like really fast. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. I'm a high performance driving instructor, or I have been in the past. I would take people out on the racetrack and teach them how to drive not only safely, but fast. And I do highway driving, evasive driving, safety classes for teenagers and adults. So I just, from when I was a young girl, I was very interested in cars. And so as a teenager, I'd go on a date. We didn't go out to dinner. We would work on cars. And so it just was very natural for me to continue with that. And the great thing about my father, not so much my mother, but my father was very encouraging of anything I wanted to do. So when I said, Dad, I want to race cars, he was very supportive. And although we didn't have the money to buy a race car, he encouraged me. And that's, I think, all a kid really needs, is to say, yeah, I'm all for that, and you can do it. And many years later, I went on to build my race car, and I became a high performance driving instructor. And I learned to take advantage of opportunities that maybe weren't there, but I created. My favorite story is I wanted to instruct for Audi sports car, one of the premier driving instruction companies. I mean, this is Audi. And so I got the name of the person who was in charge of HR, in charge of hiring. And I sent him an email, introduced myself, because I was instructing for Audi's, for an Audi club, volunteer. And I'd been doing that for a while. And so I introduced myself, sent him an email, and he responded back to me, thank you very much for your interest, but we only hire race car drivers. And then he said, but why don't you come in and we'll just chat. So I went to the racetrack to meet with him. And again, he listened to my story, and he said, well, thank you very much, but we only employ race car drivers. But why don't you come back next week, and I'll have you just follow around. You can shadow some of our instructors. So I came back the next week, and I think I was there for 3 days, and I just followed different instructors through all their different exercises, and I got paid to do this. And then at the end of the 3 days, he said, well, why don't you start next week? So I ended up working for them for several years. And this is something that had I initially, after his initial thank you, but no thank you, most people would have just gone away.
Yeah.
But he opened the door, and I walked through it. And I think a lot of people are afraid to put themselves out there, to ask the question, hey, I really want to do this. And look what happened. It literally changed the trajectory of my life. So after that, I started riding motorcycles. So it just all kind of grew from there. And then I started flying airplanes.
Okay.
So you just never know when one little stepping outside your comfort zone is going to open up a whole new world. And I think women are not taught and encouraged to do that.
Yeah.
Stay home, be quiet, be nice, don't rock the boat. Well, listen, I'm going to rock a boat. I'm going to turn it upside down, whatever I need to do. If there's something I want, I'm going to go for it, and no one's going to stop me.
So is it really true, do you think? Because women do often complain that we are not able to break through in a male dominated world, so to speak. But in fact, for the last few years have shown women, at the highest possible positions, and things that you're describing and the opportunities that you've had. Like you said, he gave you the opportunity, he opened the door, but you stepped through it. But the opportunity was there. So is it really true that we do not have those opportunities? Or is it just a case of maybe some women lacking certain skills?
I think the opportunities are definitely there. You just have to be willing to maybe jump through the hoops that they're going to require you to jump through. And that's part of what I talk about is you have to, there are rules. This is a male dominated industry, and there are rules. And we need to know what those rules are, and we need to know how to play that game. And you, if there's something you want, there's no reason as a woman that you can't do it. And I always say you can do anything a man can do unless it requires the direct use of a penis. Other than that, we're good. And we might have to work a little bit harder to get there. But let me tell you what, men, for the most part, are very fair. And if you prove yourself, you can't go in there and be silly and flirty and girly and expect to be respected. But if you go in there and you do your job, they will respect you. They're not going to give it to you. You do have to earn it. But that being said, all in all, men are very fair when you step up, but you're not going to get any special treatment because you're a woman. You need to do the work, and you need to show that you deserve to be there. Now, of course, there's a learning curve, and when you're starting out, you're going to make mistakes. Suck it up. That's what happens. But you're allowed. You're allowed to make those mistakes, but you can't run off and cry and hide. And you have to step up, and you will be very welcomed if you do your job well, whatever it is.
So what I'm taking from what you're saying here, because I'm assuming, the rules are not different for women or different for men. The rules are rules that everybody has to adhere to. It's not a case of, different set of rules for you, different set of rules for me. But what you said very important is, are women willing to make certain sacrifices to adhere to those rules and to not want special treatment or just special, special set of rules for them just because they're women? Is that correct?
Right. Absolutely. It's again, because it's a male dominated world, that industry, whatever it is, they expect their male workers to do XYZ. Now, if you think that you coming in, you're going to get to do ABC because you're a female, sorry, that's not going to cut it. And they will not give you any slack. If you can do XYZ just like the guys do, you're good. Unless you're dealing with just flat out jerks, they're gonna respect you. And when I started at Audi Sports Car, I started at the very bottom. I was shagging cones and setting up cones for the exercises, and I worked my way up to where I was out on the racetrack doing their premier classes. Just like everybody else, I put in the time, I put in the work. I had to grunt and huff and suck it up and do the crappy crap. But I was rewarded, and I didn't go in there saying, "Hey, I'm a girl. You gotta give me something." Oh, hell no. They listen, you're there to do a job, and you just go do it. But if you do it, you will be acknowledged and you will be rewarded.
So are there any situations you would say that women have it harder?
Harder in, well, I mean, there are being a woman, so I'll just stay with the high performance driving. Because I was a woman, there were times where I would have a student. I had one guy, I introduced myself and he looked me up and he looked down and he pretty much dismissed me right there. He didn't show up to the meeting because he figured he didn't need to. He was so good. And he was late coming to the track. He just had no respect for me.
Mm.
But the funny thing was, the guy couldn't drive to save his life. He couldn't put 2 laps together in a row doing the right thing. And at the end of the first day instructing this guy, I told my instructor, I said, this guy's dangerous and I'm not going to instruct him. So the next day he came back, we gave him a male instructor and he goes out and he spins his car. And it kind of just validated me. I kind of had to laugh because the guy did not know what he was doing, but he did not respect what I was telling him.
Yeah.
The great thing is a couple of years later, he found me at another racetrack and he came up to me and he apologized. He apologized for being a jerk. He apologized for not listening to me. And he said, you were right. So I'm not saying that as a woman, it's going to be as easy as if you were a man, because the men that you're working with, as far as your coworkers, they might accept you because they have seen your level of skill and your ability. So they accept you on that level. But now when I have a student who comes to me, he sees me, silly little girl, telling a man how to drive a car, and he's not going to listen. And I had another guy, we were doing an exercise. It was a slalom exercise. And I would tell him at the start of the exercise what to do. He'd go down, do the exercise. He'd do it wrong. He'd come back and I'd tell him, well, you need to do X, Y, Z. And he'd go down the track, the exercise again, and he would do it wrong. And I came back again. I said, okay, let's try it this way. You've tried it your way a couple of times and you can clearly see it's not working.
Yeah.
How about you try it my way? So I tell him what to do again. He goes down the exercise, does it perfectly. Comes back around and he looks at me. He says, I guess you really do know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh.
So it takes some time to gain their respect.
Yeah.
And that I guarantee you, if I was a man, he would not have challenged me that way. He would have just said, okay, I'll do it because you're a guy and you know how to drive, because guys, that's what guys do. They drive. So it's not easier. It's not the same. I think we have to face a little bit more, I don't want to call it discrimination, but people, other men and even women look at us like, well, what do you know? You're just a girl. Yeah. How can you drive? So yeah, I think it is a little bit harder.
And don't get me wrong, I'm asking, but I completely do relate. And me, myself, I'm in marketing. I've been in marketing for 20 years. And even to this day, sometimes when people look at me, first of all, they look at me as like, yeah, you've been in marketing for 20 years. And secondly, I always have to prove myself that little bit more. Just show my expertise that little bit more, especially if I am presenting something towards men. But like you said, it's not exclusive to men, because we women, we also are very harsh on each other. We kind of judge each other and we do the same thing, as opposed to, there's all of those, and we're going to go to those empowerment movements right now where, you have all this shouting and, oh, women should support women. But at the end of the day, it's not really the case in the majority, especially when we're talking about business. And it's not a case that exclusively we need to actually show our expertise or prove ourselves to men. It is also towards women, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You, as a woman, for whatever reason, are looked down on. You're just less than. You can't be as smart as a man. You can't be as accomplished. You can't be as skilled, whatever it is. I don't get that. For myself, I'm critical of anybody. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Let's say I've been in construction for over 30 years. I've rehab houses, and I have never had a woman work for me. It's never happened. I've never had a woman apply to work for me. But if I have a woman come into me as I had a female instructor who at the racetrack, she did not like me being there because she figured I'm the only woman, and she did not take kindly to me being there. So yeah, for whatever reason, women just are not on their side. And I don't get that. I don't get it.
I don't know, maybe it's that sort of like the feeling of the need for competition, or where there isn't any. I mean, like the only competition you really have is with yourself, and
Absolutely.
any person who has the position of leadership, because now we're going to talk about, when we go up the ranks and we are at the position of leadership, nobody cares whether you are a man or a woman once you do pass that line of proving yourself, and it doesn't really matter. It's like you said, it's more looking at people as a whole and what they represent, in terms of their skills, their
Absolutely.
expertise, their knowledge, their values, and so on. But of course, this is going to breed radicalism. Every single, good movement, because yeah, we did have to fight our way. Yes, we did. It
Yeah.
was back in the day, it was very, very difficult for women. And we did fight for equality and our right to be in places. And we did fight it. We did win that fight. But now, as everything, this is going to go to a completely radicalized, stretched out phase. We have women who are absolutely right now, in my personal opinion, this is just my personal opinion, degrading themselves with the way how they present themselves, what they do, how they treat other women, how entitled they are, how little accountability they have. And I'm having the impression that we're losing femininity. And I want to speak to your career. You help people with building courage, with setting boundaries. So essentially traits that builds a leader. So leadership skills, right? So
Right.
in this, that in those misconceptions that we as women have now, that we need to be strong, feisty, we need to be just like men, we are losing this important part, that femininity is very powerful in leadership as a skill, isn't it? And getting rid of it is actually not helping us.
One of the rules that I have for women succeeding in a man's world is don't try to be a man, because you're not. And you can do the job without being silly and ridiculous and girly, but still be a woman. And you have to find that boundary. I am very critical of women who use their sexuality, they flirt in order to get what they want. I'm leave that for the dating scene. It doesn't belong in the work world.
Yes.
And so when if I'm working on a job site, construction, rehab, if I'm in martial arts, if I'm at the racetrack, I'm going to present myself as a professional. I'm not going to be flirty or overly sexual. But I'll tell you what, I'm a girl. And when I would go to the racetrack, I would wear a pink cowboy hat. Because first of all, I wanted people to be able to see me when I was walking across the paddock. It's very can see it very easily. On my martial arts gi, it's a black gi, and I have pink on my gi because pink is my favorite color. But I tell you what, I earned it, and it's something that is reflective of me. But I don't use the girl card.
Yeah.
And so I it's very, you want to be very professional, but you don't want to lose who you are as a woman. And I think what happens is people go from 0 to 100. They're either androgynous, or they've got the tight cut, low cut sweaters, hanging the girls out. Can't we go halfway? Can't we go 50%?
Exactly.
And you can do your hair and you can have your makeup, but you're respectable, you're presentable, you're not hanging your goods out for guys to oogle at. I think there's a midpoint where you can be you, still have your femininity without being just not taken seriously.
And I wanted to speak to that. What are the traits, in your opinion, that makes men not treat us seriously? What do women specifically do or might be doing that immediately kind of in the eyes of a man co-worker, let's say, is going to be, like you said, it's going to be treated as unprofessional?
Very first thing is being emotional.
Yeah.
Women are notorious for being emotional. And I have this saying, I said, listen, men can hardly handle their emotions. They sure as hell can't handle yours. So you need to leave that at home. The overly dramatic, the hurt feelings, yeah, there's no place for that in business if you want to be taken seriously. I tell people, listen, I have one emotion and I just move it around and I'll put it over here and I'll put it, that's it. You get one emotion from me. I just, if I had to pick one trait, it would be overly emotional.
Yeah.
Because it seems that women, once they become emotional, they lose their ability to reason.
Yes.
So I would say emotions 100%.
So if we're thinking of this strong woman leader, not the girl boss, it's just like not the caricature. What is an actual woman leader? What are the traits that a woman leader should be possessing in order to position herself in that world that is dominated by men?
Self-confidence, first and foremost. You have to not only have self-confidence, but you have to have the skill level to back up what you're saying. If you go out there and you're bombastic and you speak a great game, but you don't have anything to back it up with, you're just blowing smoke up people's skirts.
Yeah.
So the first thing is self-confidence. The second thing is a skill set that is indicative of your knowledge and your experience. After that, you have to be able to communicate. If you're great at what you do, whatever industry it is, but you can't communicate effectively, it's lost. And some of the greatest training I had was out on the racetrack when I'm having to teach somebody, let's say at speed, 70, 80 miles an hour, how they need to be handling the car and what they need to be doing. First of all, I have to very quickly learn how you learn, because everybody learns differently. Everybody hears things differently. Everybody takes things differently. So I have to learn, how do you learn? And then I have to figure out, what do I need to tell you that you need to learn to do what I want you to do correctly, but do it in a way that you understand.
Yeah.
So those are things that leaders really need to figure out. Hopefully you're not doing it on a racetrack. You have a little bit of time to think about it. But the thing is, I need to figure out how you learn. And I need to figure out what the best way to teach you is. Because it's not about me. It's not about my skill, my knowledge, my whatever. It's about how I get to impart that knowledge to you and how you are going to take that in.
Right.
And I
Right.
see so many people who have the ability, who have the talent, have the experience, but they don't know how to communicate that to other people.
That is very important. And I think, if not most important, and doing it in a way that is simple and that is understandable rather than trying to convolute it and complicate it and make it super fancy, right?
Yep.
Exactly. And you spoke about confidence, and I wanted to kind of move over to your growth mentorship.
Okay.
What would you say is the best way to build confidence, but not in a, like I said, we previously mentioned, in not an entitled way where I think grandiose about myself, but real confidence that stems from the inside, but at the same time has the responsibility, has the accountability, and takes into consideration that, hey, there's always more to learn, but I'm really good at what I do.
So I like to take people backwards. If you are lacking confidence, you're lacking something inside of you. There's something that has been lost or was not imparted in you growing up. And so I actually go backwards instead of just starting where you are and adding from that. I like to go back and look at how you grew up and what was your life like growing up? Because for me, as I said, I kind of took over the mother role. And so it came to me very naturally because I was kind of forced into that. There's a lot of people who, and this is something that I'm really passionate about right now, is learning where our holes are and what our triggers are and where they came from, because they don't just pop up. They happen because you were raised a certain way. You were raised to not think that you were smart enough, to not think that you were good enough, to not feel worthy, to not be validated. And again, I had a father who just he was my biggest cheerleader. And that is what, as a young girl, built confidence in me. As an adult, the way that we build confidence is not through other people, but it's internally. And you need to go back and see, why is it that I have difficulty expressing myself? Why do I have difficulty putting myself out there? And if you look hard enough, sometimes it's right on the surface. If you look back, you'll see, oh yeah, well, that's how I was raised. I was raised to not make a fuss. I was raised to not be seen or heard. I was raised to just keep the peace.
Yeah.
And once you identify why you're having those issues, then it's a lot easier to fill in those gaps. But if you try to move forward when you don't have a solid foundation, those issues are going to continue to pop up. So I like to kind of take a few steps backwards, fill in those gaps, and you'd be surprised how quickly, once people realize how they grew up impacted how they behave now, the power and the awareness that they suddenly get is amazing. And it kind of pulls everything together.
Yeah, confidence has an incredible power, doesn't it? And now let's flip it a little bit, because we're now raising generations that are overly confident, right? Those overly cuddled and loved people who just go out there in the world and think they're the God's gift, they're the best in the world. What are, in your opinion, dangers of going too far? In your opinion about yourself, like too confident? Is there such a thing as too confident, or is it great? Is it good? Do you have anything to say about that?
There's definitely, you can be overly confident in your skill set. It kind of has a wave impact. First of all, at some point, the rubber has to hit the road, and something will identify if you really do have all those skills or abilities that you say you do, or we're going to find out somehow that it's more bravado and less ability. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when you put that out into the world, people are either going to be attracted to that or they're going to be repelled. But they're also going to question that, because people like me are going to say, oh, really? Well, let's just see about that. And at some point in your career, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's marketing, whether you're on YouTube influencer, or if you're working on cars, somebody's going to say, okay, let me see you do your work. And most likely they're not going to be able to perform, because when you have that much bravado, it typically doesn't come from ability. It comes from insecurity.
Yeah.
And when you're insecure, it's because you're hiding that you don't have the abilities that you're claiming you have.
Yeah.
just like the guy at the racetrack who ignored me, and I was his instructor, and he kept saying, we have levels A, B, C, D of drivers. A is a novice, and then it goes, C is intermediate. He kept saying, I'm a C driver, I'm a C driver. And he was in the B class. Excuse me, he was in the C class. He kept saying, I'm a D driver. And I'm thinking, son, you're not. But he had the bravado, and he kept telling me, oh, I'm this and I'm that. But I tell you what, when he spun out his car, that all came to a screeching halt because his bravado stopped where his skill set ended.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, you're saying this situation actually could have caused a factual accident.
Yes.
It could have had like physical repercussions.
Absolutely.
Whereas in business, the dangers of that sort of behavior and overconfidence, from what I see, creates a lot of distrust from potential clients, because people go to other people who have maybe not so many skills, but they are very flamboyant, they are very extrovert, they know how to market themselves, but they don't necessarily have what it takes to actually lead a person on a journey or help them with their business, which means that those clients are losing money. And
Right.
that makes them be very apprehensive and even very defensive, right, towards people who actually do have those skills, do have that expertise, and can present something. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, your confidence ends where the lack of skill shows.
Where your skill set ends. And
Absolutely.
the thing about that is you can BS somebody for a while.
Yeah.
But again, at some point the rubber has to hit the road, and you are going to expose yourself for your skill level. And
usually very quickly.
and that's the great thing, is it usually does happen very quickly. And unfortunately, people will get kind of sucked into their machismo and their gregarious outgoingness, but then they can't back it up. And so, someone is going to get sucked in, but they're going to find out very quickly that that person just isn't there to perform down the road.
Right. Okay, so back to women specifically. And
Yes.
in your own story, you kind of put a lot of emphasis of how inspiring your father was for you as a father figure. And I think that we all, men and women, we possess certain skills and traits, wonderful traits that complement one another. And obviously we bring, a lot of value to the table. What men are lacking, we can provide, and the other way around. And I'm wondering, because, with all the feminist movements, a lot of that, we have so many women angry at men, but there's so much, like you said, my father was very important in my journey, and he has shaped what I was interested in. I wanted to know, what can we, based on your experiences with your dad or with the men that you have worked with, what can we learn from men that is very valuable to us, to bettering ourselves?
Hard work pays off. And that doesn't matter if you're a male or a female. If you put in the time and the effort, your work will be acknowledged and it will be rewarded. The thing I love about men, and I love men, I'm not really a girly girl. I would prefer to hang out with men, because men are straight up, they're honest, there's very little bullshit with them. They just say it as it is. And I would much prefer to have somebody like that in my corner than somebody who is placating me, somebody who's kind of blowing smoke up my skirt. Men are, and this doesn't include the jerks. The jerks are jerks and you can't change them. I'm talking about the good guys.
Yeah.
Men are honest. If you give an honest effort, you don't even have to be good. You don't have to do it correctly. But if you give an honest effort, they will go, all right, she's trying. Okay, we can help her out. But if you play the damsel in distress, they're not going to respect that. They respect effort. And through all of the sports and industries and areas that I've been involved with, never once has somebody disrespected me for giving effort.
Yeah.
And that's my coworkers. This is not, the students that I've worked with. This is my coworkers. If they see that I'm putting in the effort and I might make a mistake or I might be wrong about something, but if I'm giving honest effort and hard work, you're good. And that's what men want. And they don't want someone who's just going to kind of ride the tide and just go along. You
Give
have a
instead
job
of
to do.
expecting, right?
Yes, you have. And listen, when you're in a man's world working, there is no entitlement. You do the job, you do the work, or you're out. And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
It gets rid of the entitled people. It gets rid of the weak people. It gets rid of the whiners. And I think that's fair. That's what I would want. And when I have somebody working with me, that's what I want. I want someone who's going to give their all. They don't have to be perfect. They have to be honest and dedicated. And men are really good about that. And I think that's the misconception that women have, is that they have to do all these crazy things. No, just do your job. Kind of simple.
That's
just do your
simple.
job. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you have a 9-step process or 9 points that you usually discuss or work on with women when you
Yes.
do your growth coaching.
Yes.
I wanted to know, what can women listening to this episode, can you talk about one of the things they can do right now that kind of would propel them on a way of changing their mindset and being more prepared into facing the man-dominated world, so to speak, or the business industry in general, just being stronger, being more conscious, being more like leaders, as opposed to just those weak women that are scared to speak up?
First of all, you have to have thick skin or thicker skin. If you are very sensitive, you're probably not going to do well. Because at first you won't be accepted. You have to prove yourself. So I would say, whatever it is, whatever industry, whatever you're involved with, you need to have a little bit of thick skin and a backbone. All of us were born with a backbone, and a lot of us aren't using it. And you need to stand your ground. You need to set the expectation of what you are presenting, and then you need to follow it up. And it's just kind of being real. But you have to, you're not going to get a pass for being a woman. And so I would recommend that you not think that you're going to get a pass. You have to show up, and you have to step up, and you have to be the person that they are needing you to be, without being silly, fussy, and emotional. Just do the job. It's really simple, and don't have all these grandiose expectations. It's going to be work.
Yeah.
It was not fun. I will tell you, when I started at the racetrack for Audi, it was not fun, because I was not welcomed. I don't want to say shunned, but I was not one of the guys, let's say. And I never wanted to be one of the guys. But you have to know that there's going to be a level of discomfort that, as a woman, you're going to encounter that a man will not. Because another guy coming in, they'd be, hey, dude, how you doing? Come on. Me, not so much. But I got there. And not with everybody. After I'd been there for several years, there were still guys who wanted nothing to do with me. I'm good with that. But for the most part, I was accepted. But you just can't think you're going to walk in and bat your eyes and smile. It's going to be okay, because it's not.
And to that last point, there's one more thing. Obviously, there are going to be, there's great guys in this world, and like you said, there's also jerks, and it is inevitable that we're going to meet both types on our journey. And sometimes you can do the best things and behave in the best way, and be that classy woman, and be that strong leader, and showcase your expertise, and actually have those skills to back it up. But then you will be treated in a less than favorable way, or a demeaning way, or cackled, or treated in a ridiculous manner, right? You're going to have, I personally used to get those messages, with men proposing me in a very direct way, which, I don't run any personal accounts. They could clearly see that it was my business accounts that they were writing to, but still allowed themselves to do that. What would you say to women? Because I know I'm not the only one. Obviously, we all encounter this. If that does happen, what is the best way, in your opinion, to react to this?
So there isn't a best way. And one of the talks I give, we go through different scenarios where maybe at work your boss says something kind of sexual, or whatever situation can happen. And there is no one right way. You have to decide in that moment, first of all, am I in danger, or is this guy just an idiot? Do I need to respond to this person? Is it just a one-off person and I'm not going to have an interaction with him again? If that's the scenario, I just say, why bother? If this is somebody you deal with on a continuing basis, then at some point you're going to need to set down the law with that person. And that's what I do, is I teach people how to treat them. You have to teach people how to treat you. And the way you do that is by the behaviors and the treatment you allow. You can't allow someone to disrespect you and then expect things to be different.
Yeah.
It does not work. So there is no one answer. It really is situational. Is this a job you want? Is this a job you need? Do you have to keep this job? Can you tell them to and walk off? It's everything. It's always different. The few rules that I do have are: you never let anybody touch you. Somebody touches my physical body, we are going to have a big problem. And I mean, they are going to have a big problem. That's a boundary that cannot be violated. And that should be for every person. And I think every woman needs to learn how to stand up and say, no, that's unacceptable. And then from that, you just have to figure out in this situation, what is important to me? Do I have to have this job? Do I need this relationship? And then you go from there. But you need to, I always say, outline and define what your boundaries are, what you're willing to accept, what treatment you're willing to accept, and what you're not. And once you've defined and outlined those boundaries, everything becomes a lot clearer, because once someone has stepped over that boundary, okay, now I know that he stepped over that boundary. Now I need to do A, B, C, or D.
Yeah.
So it's very situational. But what I want to do is give people, especially women, the ability, first of all, to learn and identify what their boundaries are. And then once they've established those, when they're violated, and they will be violated, I guarantee, how is it that you're going to respond to those situations? And it really is individual. How I respond, we can have the same situation, you and I, we can experience the same situation. I'm going to handle it differently than you're going to handle it.
Yeah.
So it's just what we define for ourselves. And even within those boundaries, there can be times where I'm just going to let something go because it's just not worth it. So it's very situational specific, but you can't even think about reacting until you outline what works and what isn't acceptable for you.
For you, exactly. Awesome. So if people want to learn more about it, where can they find you? Where can they go or connect with you? Is there any website or an email or a social media where you are specifically present that you can speak to people and talk a little bit more about what you offer?
Absolutely. YouTube, Janine Jensen Speaks. Instagram, Janine Jensen Speaks. Or if you just want to email me, it's janinejensenspeaks@gmail.com. I try to
Fantastic.
keep it really simple.
That is easy. But just in case, guys, as usual, all the links for Janine, you're going to find them at the description of this episode, as well as description of the YouTube episode on YouTube. So just go get yourself out there and you're going to have them easily accessible if that is something that you wish to explore further. And I wanted to thank you, Janine. Thank you so much for today's episode. It's been such a pleasure and so informative. And thank you guys for showing up as well. Yet another week. And if you're new here, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please, 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 if you did, leave a little review on one of your favorite podcast platforms. If you're listening on a podcast platform, and if you have a question or would like to connect with Janine through our channel, through this episode, just leave your comment on YouTube and I'm sure she's going to take a look as well. And of course, I'm there. So if you want to say something to me, give us a topic idea, by all means, go get yourself to YouTube. And don't forget to like and subscribe, give a thumbs up and press that notification bell so you don't miss another episode. We are with you every Wednesday. It's either me or my wonderful co-host Ian. So yeah, we're looking forward to some more incredible guests like Janine here. So once again, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, Janine.
Thank you so much. Had a great time.
And me as well. Thank you guys and take care.